Hello, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, episode number 73. Coming to you on, what is today? August something or another. So I hope all you guys out there are doing well today, and I'm excited to introduce you to Mario Peshev. Mario, how you doing today?
Oh, good. Thank you. How about you?
All right. And it's 9 p.m. in your neck of the woods?
Yep. 9 p.m. sharp.
Well, I appreciate you staying up either past your bedtime or, being on the show instead of watching, I don't know, whatever it is what do you like to watch?
Lots of series, but probably Suits is today. Not sure. Yeah.
No Mad Men?
Mad Men's awesome, but I think it's over. No? Yeah. I need to
Yeah,
double check.
it is.
Yeah. Okay. That was a tricky question from you.
It was a trick question. Okay, so today we've got lots of exciting stuff to talk about, especially on the topic of business in WordPress, which of course is a lot of what this podcast is about. But before we dive in, I would love to thank our show sponsors today. We've got DreamPress 2 by the friends of ours over at DreamHost. It is a managed WordPress hosting service, very affordable. I think actually probably the most affordable one on the market. Comes with virtual private servers, hip-hop virtual machines, and Memcache, and basically all the things that make your site super speedy. You can check them out over at dreamhost.com/office hours. And then we also have the WP Development Workflow webinar series. You can check more about that over at WP Development Workflow.com, helping developers level up their WordPress workflow over there. Okay, so if you are tuning in live, welcome. I always love the questions that we get from the live audience. You can send those into Mario and myself by tagging it on Twitter with hashtag OfficeFM. Or if you're tuning in from Google Plus, then just drop it in the Google Q&A and we'll get to it. So with all of that preamble, let's get to it. So Mario, for those who haven't had the chance to find you online and get hold of your awesome content, can you give us who are you? What do you do? Give us the spiel.
All right. So, hey everyone, my name is Mario Peshev. I'm the CEO and WordPress architect at DevriX. We are a distributed WordPress agency dealing with a lot of technical stuff. We are based off of Europe, and we are doing a lot of fun stuff for quite a lot of incredible clients, including the airline, automotive, education, banking, and all sorts of industries, which is pretty amazing. I'm blogging at devwp.eu. And I'm writing a lot about WordPress, WordPress development, WordPress business, and stuff like that. My background is in software engineering. I'm actually coming from the programming world, so to speak. I was dealing with Java, with Python, a bit with .NET back in the dark years when I wasn't still pretty, zealous about open source. And nowadays, I'm really happy that they're kind of open sourcing it, which makes it even more possible for more open source people to start using another great platform. And yeah, nowadays what we're doing is pretty much doing consulting and retainer plans, development, ongoing retainers. We do have experience building software as a service solutions, large multi-sites, optimizing large media websites, and things like that.
So how many people are part of your team?
So we have 15 people full-time, and we have several freelancers working with us as well.
That's awesome. And how long did it take you to go from just yourself to building up a team of people?
That's a great question. I think that I started kind of freelancing in 2008, and I hired my first employee, who nowadays I consider as a partner, in 2010, which is when we also established the company. For a few years, we were kind of 4 up to 6 people, and for the past 2 or 3 years, I think we are over 10 people strong.
Do you actually is your role in the day-to-day management of managing the employees, managing the office, that sort of thing, or are you able to do more of actually getting your hands into the uh, getting your hands dirty with consulting
Dirty.
and
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think that we like our schedule is a bit flexible, so to speak. First off, we are fully distributed. Like some of the people working with us for like over 2 years, I haven't really met ever. So we don't like our management is more flexible. What we do is work on weekly iterations with most of the people. Like here's the amount of work for the week. You can imagine it as a sprint in the Scrum world, and we simply kind of expect the work to be done by the end of the week. If there are any questions, we do have Asana for project management, which is what we've been using. And a few months ago, we switched to HipChat, which is pretty much used for some integrations and for some internal communication if needed. And I deal with different things like from sales, building partnerships, optimizing the business model, project management, planning, training the team, consulting, and doing development myself as well. So it's a variety of tasks that I have to deal with on a daily basis.
So when do you sleep?
Every 2 or 3 weeks.
Figures. That's you got a lot going on. So you're in a distributed team, and we were talking a little bit previous to going live here about client calls, and of course you said that you're doing a lot of business with clients in the U.S. So a lot of your calls are taking place at odd hours on your end. As far as your team is concerned, are they primarily in Europe, or are you spanning 12 hours worth of time zones?
Yeah, so I think it's probably about 10 hours time zone difference from the western part to the eastern part. Right now we have people on 3 continents, and we kind of hope that we'll be able to hire more people in the States too for different purposes.
Well, I just finished reading The Year Without Pants by Scott Berkman that he worked over at .com on their social team for a while. And just hearing him talk about the distributed workforce and team meetings and so forth, I think that would be tremendously challenging to have to work around that. Okay, well, I'm going to start peppering you with questions until other people get their questions in. So real quick, while we're talking about US, Europe, working internationally, let's talk about WordPress in the context of outside the US bubble. This year, WordPress will be hosting its community summit right up against WordCamp US, and once again, it will be on US soil. As a WordPress contributor, a champion of open source, do you find it difficult being outside of the US in terms of support or resources, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure that this is an answer that most people wouldn't like to hear in public, so to speak. But in my opinion, it's extremely challenging to be really active unless you're in at the States or Canada or somewhere within those time zones. Probably a good example of that is I've had patches submitted on track for about 1.5 years. And then I went to WordCamp San Francisco. I met Nathan and a few other folks. And within the first week, I got 4 patches that got in the WordPress core. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I got 3 or 4 more, which could be interpreted in different ways. But again, at least my personal story is that unless I was able to go to WordCamp San Francisco, probably I wouldn't have been a core contributor right now. Or at least it could have been postponed with 1 year or 2 afterwards. This is one of the things, and other things kind of related as well are things like the community meetups, like the weekly chats and things like that. I think that the core chat right now it's at 11 p.m. my time, which I was able to do for a year or 1.5 years. But nowadays, it's not really possible to simply attend every single week, especially when there are other teams that also gather late at night for my time zone. And if you kind of think about it as something that could be accomplished by someone in the States, if it's during business hours, it's kind of more possible. And if you have a family or like some personal life outside of work, it gets pretty trickier to kind of join all of those conversations happening mostly during US hours.
Do you see any ready solution or something that would be not too difficult to implement that could make that situation easier?
Well, honestly, that there have been many discussions about the community summit, and a lot of people have proposed that it may actually happen in Europe this year, probably in Asia or Australia next year, so that it's kind of rotating. Another discussion that we had at WordCamp Europe here in Sofia last year was that probably if the lead developer of the WordPress release is in, for example, in Europe, probably the office hours would be more appropriate to be in a European time in order to accommodate for more contributors and more local people being active, or simply doing some sort of a rotation system so that like during one release it's easier for the US guys, the next one for Europe, the next one for Asia or Australia, and so forth. So in general, there are ways for this to be more kind of more comfortable for other people, but there's this kind of general understanding that the majority of the contributors are in the States, and it's kind of catch-22, like if it isn't more convenient for other people to join the conversation, there aren't going to be many more people getting involved with WordPress in the first place.
No, that makes sense. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, because whenever I have guests that are outside the US, I like to hear their opinion on involvement in the community when you're outside of all of the support that exists here in the US. So switching gears, so just fair warning, Mario, and you said that you liked improvising, so you're gonna have to do it today. But so sometimes we switch gears kind of randomly here based on how the questions are coming in. So we're just gonna roll with it. But going back to talking about your business, you mentioned that you've got, you're covering multiple industries. So versus having just a specific, vertical industry that you're focusing on, how are you going about attracting new clients?
Right, that's a good question. So I wouldn't say that like being able to work in a vertical is pretty important. But I wouldn't really identify a vertical by having a specific specialty, like, for example, dealing only with medical centers or with dentists or something like that. This is one way to look at it. Like, obviously, if you want to specialize, you may become the greatest expert in that specific niche, like law or medicine or something else. But obviously, there are other ways to kind of implement the vertical aspect of that. For example, there are some folks who deal with membership websites, with e-commerce. You're a famous Genesis expert. So, for example, if you got a client, I would assume that as long as it is Genesis and the price range is good, you would be just as happy to deal with them, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's kind of something that we do here. Like, what we do is we specialize in technical development, and the majority of the agencies and consultants out there aren't really providing custom solutions. The majority of our work is building scalable systems, integrating third-party APIs, building software as a services, or scaling multi-sites. Which is still a kind of a broader niche, but it's more involved in dealing with technical development in large, heavy, slow systems is what I'm going to say, and integrating various different APIs. So this is probably kind of our niche, which is what we've been focusing on for the past couple of years.
All right. Well, a great question from Sarah that actually kind of follows up on that. But so you've got this distributed team, and obviously they're fitting the bill. They have the skill set that you need to serve the clients that you're going to serve. How do you even find these people in the first place?
That's a good question. So personally, I have a thing. I'm not one of the like most companies, especially the ones in the States and Canada and Western Europe, are used to working with community contributors or people who are kind of really popular in the industry. My personal approach is a bit more unpopular, and I'm trying to grow my people. I have over 10,000 hours as a consultant and trainer. I've been a trainer at various corporations like VMware, SAP Labs, Saudi Aramco, which is the largest petrol company, CERN, and a lot of other like companies. Lots of universities and schools as well. So I have a pretty large network of people who are super passionate and motivated and eager to learn more and become better. So there's a saying, I'm not sure what's the English translation, but you can hardly teach an old dog new tricks. Not sure what's the exact translation, but
You pretty much nailed it.
yeah, awesome, great. I'm pretty happy with myself. But yeah, what I'm trying to do is like I really love giving chance to people who aren't that acquainted with WordPress. Like, I find a great joy in just getting people who are really motivated in learning. Like they're willing to kind of dig everything. Like, what's that? How is it working? How's that working? And just staying and poking and digging and checking stuff. So what we normally do is we just start working with that kind of people. Like, for example, my first employee, like I said, that I consider as a partner now, I find him at the university. We were like studying together and said, okay, how do you feel about starting this summer with me? And let's see how it goes, right? And he didn't really know that much back then, but he was pretty passionate and he started simply learning and digging into everything. And then we started hiring more and more people from my trainings, from different events that I attended, and people who, like, I have a lot of local videos teaching WordPress. Unfortunately, they're in Bulgarian, so it's a bit hard to translate. But people who are simply passionate about that and who are pretty happy, like, because I was just listening to some podcast with Chris Lemma, and he was saying that like the average amount of time a person stays at the company is about 18 months, and he's able to extend it to about 6 years or so. Which is kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a company spirit, a community, a place where people are pretty excited about the opportunity given, and they feel the internal company spirit, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely makes sense. That's just a huge undertaking, because you're talking about building a culture that appreciates the people that work for you and with you, and makes them want to stay, while also trying to bring in business that, you know, your employees will enjoy working on, while also trying to do a good job. That's just, I applaud you. But that's I see why you don't sleep but every 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, truth is that probably my first job was at the age of 11. And then I switched several jobs, like during my teenage years and college and everything like that. And I had the opportunity to have been given the chance to work at a pretty young age. And even if it wasn't really common, like no one at my school or whatever was working, like people were able to see the potential in me. Like it sounds kind of snobbish, but I was really motivated and excited. I was staying late night hours, working all the time. Like at some point of time, I was going to school, hitting excellent grades, and working at 2 places. So I was just hustling quite a lot back at the days, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. Like especially with people who are like either younger, like probably last year at high school, like in college or at the university, and it's the market. In the market, it's really hard if you don't have experience to get an opportunity to start working, right? I mean, most companies are looking for at least 18 months of experience or even more. So it's pretty hard to prove yourself. And when I'm meeting people, I can see when they're motivated, they are able to find their way through Google or Stack Overflow or whatever. And I'm happy to give them a chance and see whether it's a good fit or not.
Have you ever ended up, and this is a question from Patty, but having any sort of performance issues that you needed to address? Like maybe you thought somebody was super motivated and turns out not so much?
Yes, it happens. it even happens every now and then now. And I've realized that there are kind of two types of people, at least the team that we've been working with. There are some people who want to do some things, but they kind of want to reach at the end of the tunnel, but are not willing to make the walk, right? And this is kind of a group with two different dimensions. The first one is people who simply aren't too motivated, and we kind of stop working with them. Like if they're not that motivated, we stop working with them. But there's also another type of personality, which are people who simply work only under pressure. Like for example, our front end guy, he's terrific. He has some outstanding designs, and he digs all the time through Gulp and Grunt and like everything Bower, and like he's simply digging all the time. But if you don't give him an assignment and a deadline, he'll start slacking full time, right? And he personally told us several times, you need to kind of step with your shoe on my neck so that I can work. I love working, but unless I have a deadline, I'm simply not going to work at all. So it's kind of an interesting model, and I kind of understand it. Like this is somehow the way I work myself, right? I just add like 1 billion tasks in my project management system just to keep myself motivated and work on as many as possible, right? If I don't have tasks for 2 days, I'm just going to slack for 2 days, and that's it. So I kind of understand this model.
Well, I would call that slacking if you didn't have work. You're just taking a little bit of a rest. But I think what you just described, it's really interesting. And there's nothing that's good that your front-end guy can recognize that and say, hey, this is what I need to, kind of keep me on task. But that's if somebody wanted to own their own business or freelance, that personality would not work out very well.
Well, it's kind of a procrastination, but it's simply kind of a state of a personality, really. Like some people, they simply know how to break their day into parts or anything, and they just go to work, do some stuff, and again, get back home. But some people simply work under pressure. Like I've read a lot about psychology. I took some classes on NLP and some other things in that area. And I know how many different types of people there are. And there are some great people who simply work like that. Like, I mean, this is a really long topic, but in general, it kind of doesn't make you a bad person if you start slacking unless you have a deadline. It's simply a personality. I can't describe it any better.
Yes, not at all. And I hope I didn't mean to imply that it was merely that there are different work styles, and that the person who is going to freelance would not be as successful if they needed that work environment, unless, just getting a paycheck and eating, that might be pressure enough.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got a good question from the vendor. Let's talk about money. So how do you arrive at payment / salary for your employees? Is that based on the kinds of projects you're bringing on, or their level of experience, or
about the salaries, or? So we are kind of trying to stick to industry standards based on where the person is, what's the average standard, and things like that. It's kind of a boring question, but that's at least what we're trying to do. Like we're trying to cover whatever's acceptable, and we try to increase it, as much as possible. And also we try to work out the bonus system. Like if we have a tough project and we say, okay, let's sit down and do that, let's sit down and do this, then we have bonuses, then we have like team buildings or some other internal company benefits. That's what we do. Like we try, purchasing like, company software or books or some licenses for something, or some online training licenses or things like that. For some folks, we're kind of subsidizing some hardware. So it's kind of a, standardized salary with some other benefits that are kind of part of the deal.
Cool. Well, I guess the follow-up question to this is, are you hiring?
Probably the answer is we are always hiring, but it's really hard to find the right talent.
Sure. Indeed. Okay. Well, if anybody is out there listening and what you have heard so far sounds intriguing, you know where to find Mario. Okay. So let's get into some WP drama. Okay. It's not
my
actually
favorite subject. Okay.
It's not actually WP drama, but you wrote, by the way, to folks who are tuning in, do go check out Mario's blog it's DevWP.
devwp.eu, like developer
.eu. Okay, I
WordPress.
don't know why I was thinking it was Peshev .com.
I have peshev.net, but it's another thing. Yeah.
Okay, we'll ignore all the botched domain names I just said.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of great content around the business side of WordPress. So, I mean, not only are you, forgive me while I just brag on you a second, but you've got tremendous technical capability, but you also have a great amount of business savvy. And I'm guessing from what we talked about pre-show that's you impart a lot of that wisdom either through the various masterminds that you're in or in a consulting capacity with your clients. But the article you wrote recently was, just to sum it up, it was called Blogging and the WordPress Ecosystem, and how, well, I'll give you my impression of the summary. But we get together in our circles and gripe about cheap clients or people that aren't willing to pay, and I mean, it's what we love to harp on. But what you really highlighted is it's our job to educate and to let potential customers know what they can expect. Can you talk a little bit about what prompted that article?
So most of my articles are based on like various discussions with people or calls with potential clients or like Twitter convos or something like that. I mean, the main thing is I think like there was probably some discussion that, oh my God, there's this cheap client here, or they want to get Facebook built for $200, which is something that I see occasionally, like over and over and over and over again, and things like that. And I mean, what I'm trying to do most of the time is, especially when I took the NLP classes like 10 years ago, I'm always trying to put myself in the other's shoes, and I'm trying to think. Like every single time I go to a dentist or every single time I take my car to the mechanic, I'm trying to think as the guy on the other side is me, and what sort of dumb stuff I don't want to tell him, right? And for example, like today, like my car was at the mechanic and he called me and said, look, we actually decomposed your engine and we figured out that it's going to cost like twice and it's going to take 10 more days, right? And like I was pretty frustrated and said, look, I know that there was no way for you to understand that without decoupling everything. So this was the only way for you to understand it. That doesn't make me any less frustrated, but for you as an expert, I want you to tell me what's the best thing to do here. Like whether it's like sell this or like buy a new thing or fix it or whatever it is. So I'm kind of trying to apply my experience in other fields at the WordPress industry, right? And that's one of the things that I was explaining here. And when I'm looking for services, it's really hard for me to understand what's the state of a specific market, right? For example, if I'm looking at .NET services, you can see the highest level of professionalism there, right? It's a corporate world, it's enterprise, it's Microsoft. They have all gold certificate partners. They have all the MVPs, which are the like most valuable professionals there. You have a lot of different certification programs. You have this, you have that. It smells professionalism, right? It simply states that. And when you start looking at WordPress, it's pretty hilarious. Like it's find the cheapest theme, find the lowest cost, get this for free, get that for free. Everything is free, everything is easy, everything is fast, everything is cheap. If you look for service providers, like all of them are going to be like they're simply going to provide the lowest value as the biggest benefit, right? And that's one of the reasons like I keep seeing that over and over and over and over again. And that's kind of on one hand, it's what would be the representation of WordPress for other people. It's free, it's cheap, it's super easy, everything is included by default, which means that there's no extra work to be done, right? I had a client, and I actually have a blog post for that too. Like 2 years ago or so, he contacted me with some plugin changes thing, and I said, okay, what's your budget? And it was a really long list of changes, including new database tables, wizards in the admin, whatnot. And he said, look, I bought the plugin for 25 bucks, which means that it would be worth 15 bucks for you to implement this whole list of changes. 15, 1-5. And like, I was really frustrated back then too. But on the other hand, like if you buy a car and if you need some changes, it's not going to cost you several times more than the price of a car, right? And if you Google and try to find your way through other agencies or service providers or so, you simply are going to find quite a lot of service providers working for low cost, right? Probably this is a pretty long story that could be like a separate mini ebook as well. But what I'd say as a conclusion is that we need to provide more content about better services, better solutions, high quality. What's the difference between do-it-yourself or cheap stuff? What are the benefits? Like people don't understand things like speed, like security, like hosting awareness, or like anything, because all service providers are trying to offer is a cheap, fast, quick, beautiful solution.
And you're proposing, by the way, I love that you leaned into this and your voice kicked up a notch. We've hit on a topic that you're passionate about. So you're proposing that I guess a blog is just one of many ways we can educate customers, but that we, as these service providers, need to be blogging to get the word out, as you will. Do you think these potential customers are reading our blogs?
So I've learned that a lot of my customers are reading my blog even before contacting me, and some are actually contacting me for that specific reason. And what I'm saying is that like the rule of thumb in the marketing world is that you need to write about your customers, which means that you need to write exactly about your buyer persona, about the perfect customer that's going to buy your services and so forth. So you need to represent your skills for them. But people sometimes forget that their services are part of a bigger pool of services, which is the WordPress industry itself. And the more you ignore that, the more people are going to show up and write crappy content about cheap services, low quality, and things like that. And for one quality blogger, there are going to be 100 more writing low quality content and creating websites for cheap and ugly services. And again, yeah, my suggestion, the favor that I'd like to ask from people, from service providers that provide high quality solutions, is simply to start blogging more and educating more their customers. Otherwise, right now, I'm pretty comfortable saying that people outside of the WordPress community often see WordPress as a joke. People outside of the PHP community see PHP as a joke and WordPress as the kids in the kindergarten, like for real. I was at the PHP meetup last night, and like 20 minutes in, someone asked me like what I did. I said I was giving a talk at the WordCamp Netherlands. He said, "What about?" I said WordPress, and everyone was cringing. Oh, but like, did you have to do that or what? I said, no, I'm actually working with WordPress. And most people were like, the entire table was silent. And I said, look, guys, we were just talking about PHP 7 versus HHVM. We were just talking about optimizing this, scaling that. You can apply what we discussed now, and that's what I do in the WordPress world. And they kind of asked me, like, are you actually able to do development with WordPress? Is it not only building designs or like drawing or painting or something, you know? So that's what most people understand from WordPress, because that's what people outside of the WordPress community see about WordPress. And that's kind of one of the things that I'd like to change. Like, in order for me to be more comfortable in this space, in order for me to be able to work with better clients, I try to write more and allow more people to be able to kind of find my articles and say, oh, look, there's actually another perspective here, which means that I need to compare the first thing to the second thing, and now I have a broader picture on the WordPress ecosystem.
I'm left a little bit speechless. I'm just soaking in what you're saying. And WP Studio over on Google Plus has asked a question that falls right in line with what you're talking about. But how how do WordPress developers get more acceptance or, / respect in these other PHP-based communities or other language communities?
So it's a tough question because it really depends on what do people want to do. Like, for example, if you're a front-end developer, you may feel more comfortable dealing with front-end stuff and joining other communities, like the JavaScript community, for example, or go to all the UX conferences or HTML, CSS conferences and other things in this area. If you're a backend developer, at least my personal idea of providing full stack web development services is that you need to be fairly acquainted with PHP, pretty comfortable with JavaScript in the WordPress space, but again, like backend JavaScript, like Backbone, Knockout, or probably Angular and other things. And you need to know your way around SQL and different RDBMS like MySQL. And the main thing is that if you are aware of that, if you want to be a developer providing actual solutions, like you probably have already started learning more about that. Like simply reading PHP books and MySQL and JavaScript and things like that, building applications with other platforms, frameworks, CMS if you want, and simply doing software development. Like the fact that WordPress, I mean, at least from my point of view, because I have an engineering degree, so to speak, is that if you want to provide the entire solution, you need to be aware of every single step of the stack, which means from operating system and underneath computer architectures, like how does your computer work? Like what does the CPU does, the RAM, the hard drive? How are they connected to the motherboard? Like how is operating system working? What is the difference between the operating systems? Then like different programming languages. What compiles to what? How does a pass work or Nginx or whatever? Like for example, if you know all of that, you understand HHVM and say, okay, hack is being like you compile to this, then you interpret to this, then you do that. I mean, if you want to provide professional services and do better and scale more and squeeze more out of that, you just need to dig deeper and try more, try different applications, different contexts, solving different kinds of problems. Like, I mean, for more keen developers, there's a pretty popular book called The Pragmatic Programmer, which is explaining all types of concepts about programming. And they actually advise that pragmatic programmers should learn a new programming language every single year, just in order to extend their knowledge, to understand different paradigms, to understand different design patterns in a different application style. But again, I mean, I know that it sounds really geeky, but in my opinion, if you're a front-end developer, then you need to partner up for more professional solutions with someone who knows the ins and outs of the back-end development. If you're a back-end developer, you need not only to be able to use WordPress, but apply the programming knowledge, which is pretty much language independent, or at least platform independent, which means that you need to be able to build your own, like, I don't know, administrative system or dashboard or whatever to be, just to implement authorization, authentication, create new database tables and things like that. Because if you want to get outside of the small bubble of WordPress, you need to do development. And if you want to be comfortable and use WordPress to its full extent and even outside of it, you simply have to know development as well.
So a couple of follow-up questions on that. Number one, do you think the WordPress REST API will help in terms of other or outside of WordPress developers' perception of WordPress in terms of capabilities and interactions with other platforms?
So the main thing is that it's a great thing and it would be pretty helpful to be able to use it. So I'm really hands-on on the JSON API and the REST API or whatever the latest name. So I think that it's really important, and I'm pretty sure that there are going to be quite a lot of applications on top of the REST API. And just to give a pretty quick example, Drupal is like they're waiting for Drupal 8 for almost 4 years now, I think. But they rebuilt some components like in their core to be kind of Symfony compatible. Or I'm not sure what's the best way to say it, but they invited the Symfony community by making their core quite a lot of Symfony friendly so that they can reuse different Symfony framework components. I mean, I'm really not explaining it the best possible manner, but the thing is that they're embracing the Symfony community as developers in order to bring more technical, capable people in their project. That's one thing that we may do as a WordPress community, just to embrace and invite more technical experts to our core community.
I love it. So Jackie asked a really astute question. Do these issues that we're kind of talking about, do they exist in other open source platforms, or is this unique to WordPress because it's more in its infancy, or what's your opinion on that?
I wouldn't say that it's an infancy. So one thing I've noticed is that there's no other community probably outside of the Joomla one and the WordPress ones. You know, Joomla I'm putting kind of in the same head, where non-technical people are starting to build solutions, right? I mean, the main problem here is that, so you have a problem, you find a solution, and you see the end result, right? And you see, okay, I'm done, everything is done. But in practice, it isn't done because you don't understand the process and you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Which is great on one hand because the learning curve is super low and it allows for new people entering the market, learning more, getting into the services business and so forth. But there's zero incentive for those people to become better and to actually understand how things work. And outside of the WordPress and Joomla words, everything else in the web development field requires programming skills. Like, you simply cannot build an application without knowing at least some part of programming. Like, it's pretty much more complicated, which means that people there are simply more technically aware. Whilst with WordPress, it's easy to buy the cheapest hosting and go to Softaculous or Fantastico, click next, and boom, you have a WordPress installation, right? Most people simply don't realize what are the consequences of installing a website online and what could happen like outside of this process of simply installing something. And that's a really huge picture of things that could happen. Like, you know, I'm not even going to start on that. Yeah.
Well, you can get started if you want, brother. Come on.
We need like 6 hours or something. So there's that.
We can have the WordPress office hours, after hours. So last episode, I had Tanya on from the WP Developers Club. And have you heard of what she's doing over there?
No, just heard about them, but no, nothing about that.
So it's essentially kind of where she was coming from was looking at the specific issue of licensing, right? So in all these big technologies, Microsoft, Oracle, et cetera, there are licensing. So when you get a developer or you hire a developer that's got, you know, the badge of having this license, you know that you're getting a certain quality. Whereas in WordPress, that doesn't exist. I mean, you can do a 5-minute install and call yourself a developer. So there's a lot of disparity in terms of the skill set between a bunch of people who use that same word to describe themselves, a developer. So she started something called the WP Developers Club that's really kind of right in line with what you're talking about, which is getting people back to the core principles of programming and understand what's happening from the ground up and doing things properly, so that then when you go on and, you know, whatever it is you're doing, you're updating a plugin, or I mean, you might be doing some mundane task, but you're understanding the kind of the components under the hood. So yeah, anybody listening that missed that episode with Tanya, go back and listen to it, because it was a fantastic discussion. We've got another question from CJ, and again, always great questions from the folks tuning in, and this is exactly what we're talking about. But Mario, you mentioned that you like encouraging people who are keen to learn and grow in using WordPress. So what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out and looking to level up their approach to WordPress?
That's a great question, and I'm actually going to connect that to what you just said about licensing. What I call that, it's a certification program or something like that, a training program, certification levels or so. And I tried to raise that question twice at WordCamp San Francisco, including the Community Summit last year. And it was really accepted with more of a hatred, if I have to say it like that, simply because people kind of expected that it's going to commercialize in a pretty terrible way, or kind of cheat the system or something like that. I actually believe that I'd rather have 5% of people who are cheating the system than having 95% of people who have no idea what they're doing, right? And CJ actually raised a great question, and one of the problems that I've been seeing is that I don't have a great suite of resources that I can give to someone who's just starting. And that's something that has been bothering me for a while. Like I said, I have my training courses, but they're in Bulgarian, and it's just really hard to translate them. And I can give them to local people, but every time with like foreigners, I simply can't give them anything in particular. Like I've been looking at PP's tutorials, which are pretty good, at like Bob WP for the basic things, or like a lot of other people for the basic things, like WP 101, Troy Dean, and everything. But there's no curriculum that you can start and take it from there and start growing. I even tried to write a blog post for that, and I spent probably 6 hours looking for different resources, and I simply wasn't able to connect the dots. So if anyone's looking at that and is in the training space, please start creating a pretty large program from people who know nothing, so that they can become, beginner WordPress users, WordPress administrators, like implementers, and then having branches for front end and back end and all sort of stuff. I have considered that myself, and we have discussed that with other trainers, but I think that it's a complicated thing. It would take quite a lot of time, and it would be really awesome if some of the big guys kind of supports that, like Automatic or TenUp or WebDev or some of the, the big crew, simply because it's going to give the right authority to that. And like one of the things I don't understand is Acquia, the company behind Drupal. They actually have certification program. They do maintain the training resources, and they offer you to become a trainer in order to spread the word and in order to teach other people to do that the right way. Like one of their guys actually contacted me and offered me to become a licensed Drupal trainer and everything, going through these materials, and like everything was maintained by them. Like you simply need to know that and go and take their presentations and teach that to other people, which is pretty awesome.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back and replay the episode just to hear all of this again, because I really appreciate that your honest approach, and you know what, it's not a perfect ecosystem, and there are things that we can do to make it better. I'm trying to roll around in my head what that would look like to formalize training in WordPress, and I feel it would require quite a bit of fortitude and possibly scotch, but we'll see.
To be honest, I think that we have some things, but they're kind of a separate components. I mean, now we have the theme review handbook, we have the plugin development handbook, and these are incredible resources. But there are so many other things happening in WordPress, and we just need to kind of grow that. And then we need to break it into an actual learnable pattern, so that there are other ways for people to learn them. Because for some people, it may be easy to read the handbook, but for others, it would be like a tutorial manner, a presentation, video training, one-on-one, like on-site training, just different mediums, because people can learn better in different ways.
That's a great thought. Okay, we've got a little bit of time left here with Mario, so if you're tuning in live and want to get your question in, holla, do that with hashtag OfficeFM on Twitter or over in the Google Q&A app. DreamPress 2, managed WordPress hosting service. If you're looking for another host, need a place to host your client websites or even host your own websites, check them out. They have a really fantastic service over there at dreamhost.com/office hours. And then also the WordPress development workflow. It's a webinar series that's actually right on cue with talking about education, but showing folks how to go from starting up a project like a custom theme build and putting it under version control, using tools like SAS and Grunt to make your development life a little bit easier. And then finally, how are you keeping your local development environment synced with your live development environment? You can find out more about that over at wpdevelopmentworkflow.com. Okay, so let's, do we need to, anything else did we miss covering anything that you wanted to say on the topics we were just on?
No, like I said, we'll need another 6 hours for this, so we're good for now.
Okay, yes, we'll have an extended session. So Let's see. Jackie's asking, what challenges in WordPress do you face when scaling and working with third-party APIs?
With third-party APIs, I haven't really, like, I don't think that I have issues with third-party APIs that are WordPress related. I mean, most of the stuff is really server related, which is like all the time we have complete access to our servers. So it's pretty easy to kind of get control and install whatever software is needed for us. Like if we have SOAP APIs, we can simply install the PHP SOAP extension and then get it up and running with CRL and everything else. Probably the only problems that we have are whenever we need to do a product, like whenever we're building something for a client, and it needs to be hosted everywhere. The problems that we naturally face there is that we have an unlimited like number of hosts with different server environments and different restrictions, different firewalls, different whatever. Like some hosts are restricting specific libraries, some don't have installed specific tools, other limit the external connections based on some rules and whatnot. And these are pretty much the main issues that we've been having. But I mean, most of the time having external APIs means that you need to like fetch some data from somewhere and send some data to somewhere. And I mean, I think that the HTTP API at WordPress is pretty, stable, and they took care of almost all the, bad issues that may happen due to specific environments. And they actually have a stack of things that they do. Like they first try this, then they fall back to sockets, then they do this, then they do this, which makes it pretty possible to adjust to as many different environments as possible. You're muted. Yep. Still?
Couldn't get my hand on the keyboard shortcut fast enough. A question from the vendor. So when it comes to page builders and these drag and drop themes and basically things that make, perpetuate the idea that WordPress is super easy, even for someone with no skills, are those adding to the problem, or are they legitimately serving a market need?
So that's a great question. Now, I have two different kind of points of view on that. I think that there's nothing wrong in page builders or whatever in general. I think that the main problem there is that there aren't very many products that are written in the best possible manner. And that kind of comes from the problem with pricing in the WordPress context, because like most people see WordPress as it already solves 95% of the problem and it's free, which means that it doesn't make sense to pay quite a lot of money for the final 5%, right? And this means that Visual Composer or whatever is kind of under $30 per license, and there are a lot of other products that are that cost just a few bucks. The only more high-end product that I've seen is Conductor by Matt Medeiros, which is in the higher range, and they actually spend a lot of time to make it more enterprisey. I've seen other examples for front-end builders and other sorts of tools, but my personal experience so far is that they're simply trying to solve too many problems. They don't care about performance that much, and it's kind of understandable because it's super expensive to make that work properly. And with that business model, with that pricing and the potential pool of customers, it's not really possible to make it work.
Yeah, that is a definite conundrum. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's always going to be people, even if the community as a whole rises up, we all kind of get better with our pricing and charging what we're worth, and we're educating our clients, and we're giving out quality solutions. There's always going to be the lower end of the market that wants to be served.
I don't really see a problem in the lower end of the market. Again, I believe that it's great to have something that you can do it yourself and have it for free. But I really see some sort of a suppression on the higher tier of the market. That's the main problem. Like, I read a case study at VIP WordPress.com, Automatics blog, from some sort of company that worked with, I think, 10up. And they said, like, the plugin infrastructure or whatever, it's like there are tons of plugins, but we were super afraid to use any of the plugins because we know how poorly coded they are. So they kind of worked with 10up just because they were super afraid that they're going to work with something that's poorly coded, it's going to break their site, it's going to be insecure, and everything else. And I think that that's one of the main problems. Like, it's great to have something for the like lower tier, but trying to suppress the higher tier, not having an enterprise market, not having a validated plugins repository for things that are safe to use, that's the thing that's kind of slowing down WordPress, or it's kind of bringing it entirely down to the lower tier.
Wow. Okay, man. Amazing food for thought. I'm not being a very good host because I'm just chewing on what you're saying. Jackie has a question. It kind of made me laugh when I read it, but I love it, and I think you'll answer it. In your opinion, what is the weakest link in WordPress?
That's a good question. I don't think there is something like a weakest link per se. I think that probably one of the things that's kind of in my head now is that it's super over connected with everything, which means that, for example, you can't really decouple the backend or like the theme API itself. It's super connected to the front end and so forth. So recently I've been thinking a lot about Backpress, the potential framework that's like to be running similarly to WordPress. And I think that especially for enterprise kind of projects, there's quite a lot of overhead coming from WordPress. Like, for example, if you install WordPress on an enterprise, you get millions of hits, for example, on a daily basis, which is pretty tricky to scale. And even if you install, I think 2015 or 2014, one of the latest themes, for every single front-end request, and I think even for backend, you have 4 database calls trying to fetch some widget options that are not even displayed there. Like, there's no conditional for there. And I mean, there are a lot of things in WordPress that are built for generic purposes, like just to be able to serve the 90% of the cases. But if you want to build something custom, something like for the enterprise, and you want to scale it, every single query is 1 million times slower, simply because you have 1 million requests a day, right? And you simply cannot detach specific components that easily with WordPress. Like I said, as the admin or as the theming thing, like there's no specific core with modules that you can decouple and make it work as just as a base, just as an API or as a framework.
Interesting. I had a guest on a while back. He was talking about specifically his whole job is reducing or increasing speed. A lot of that, he said, is by reducing trips to the database. Andy, yeah. I forget what episode that he was on, but to go back and listen to that. What? Sorry, I was reading Twitter, and then so my question to you is, if you could look into your crystal ball and see the future of WordPress, where do you see it in 5 years, 10 years, or is it even around?
Well, I still see catering for the small user, for the blogger, for the small business owner, for the general user. And the reason I see that is that most of the decisions that are kind of landing in core now are a lot of changes for the customizer, for example. An enterprise user doesn't need a customizer. It's not something that they're going to use. They need different things. But on the other hand, a blogger or a small business owner, they kind of need a customizer. And I mean, a lot of the decisions are kind of lean toward that market. And also, we love to praise WordPress for the huge percentage of people that use it, like over 24% of the web. And we are trying to reach the 50% of the web. And if you compare it to Drupal, I think that they kind of own like 2.5% of the web or something like that, like a tenth of what WordPress offers. But most of their clients are in the enterprise market. And statistically speaking, if we want to get to like 50%, we have to do as much as possible for the smaller, tiny market of bloggers and small business owners, which is the reason why I see WordPress going there. And the other thing is like when post formats UI tried to land in core in 3.6, it was an idea that was pretty similar to what Tumblr had back then. The customizer is something that I think Squarespace had, and I think that some of the things that they're trying to get in come from Squarespace and Wix, other than comparing to actual frameworks and tools that are meant to be used for high-scale projects. So I really hope that I'm wrong, simply because I'm kind of in the other market, but that's at least what I see right now.
There was an article or a discussion, I've slept too many times to remember where it originated, but it was talking about the idea of basically forking WordPress. So like you're talking about, decoupling it, some of those components, and say you still got WordPress hanging around back here, but then maybe you have an enterprise branch that has stripped out a lot of those unnecessary components, or a Blogger specific branch, which of course would incorporate a lot of what WordPress has now. Can you see that? Or would that even make sense?
Because of everything happening with WordPress's philosophy, but I can potentially see some forks emerging from like Drupal. From WordPress, simply because Drupal had Backpress, which is a specific thing that's kind of a fork of Drupal. Joomla kind of started from Mambo, and like there are a lot of projects in the history of the technical world that happen through forks. So personally, I don't really see a problem with forks. I think that you can still maintain some sort of backwards compatibility, but create a pretty amazing platform, just as WordPress kind of started from BB Catalog. That's kind of more focused on the enterprise layer. Like if you take a look at what was the framework? Backpress, I think. If you take a look at it, it's pretty outdated, like 5 years old or something. But the idea of just having libraries, just having components to use is pretty awesome. And I think that something like that would be incredible if it was available in WordPress itself. But other than that, having a fork would be something pretty nice for a specific, group of people or agencies.
All right. Well, Mario, that brings us to the end of this hour, but I look forward to having you back for another 5 hours in the future. Guys, if you enjoyed today's show, I would so much appreciate a review over on iTunes or Stitcher, letting other people know. I would love for more people to be able to hear the things that Mario is saying, because I think it lifts all of us up. And if you want to be sure and get reminders for the next episode of the show, go over to officehours.fm/subscribe, and I'll only be in your inbox once a week. And Mario, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts, and hopefully there were no rotten tomatoes thrown, at least on Twitter that I saw. Any parting things you would like to add before we sign off?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Like probably as a parting thing, I know that my opinion is pretty unpopular, and I know that it may sound as ranting to some people, but what I'm trying to do is bringing a different perspective from a different point of view, from a different type of persona using WordPress one way or the other. So I'd really love feedback and different points of view, because I think that if we kind of gather up and share our thoughts and opinions in a reasonable manner by backing them up with some proof, I think that there's a really bright future for WordPress, because I know that the guys behind WordPress are watching that. They're kind of the big brother, and if they see something reasonable, I'm pretty sure that they're actually going to consider that and potentially implement it in WordPress as well.
Yep, that's the beauty of open source, is the diversity of skills and personalities behind it. So if people want to give you feedback, where can they find you online?
So I'm No Fear Inc. Twitter with underscores between no and fear and ing, and devwp.eu, which is like developerwordpress.europe. So yeah, I mean, happy to answer all sort of questions and follow-ups on that from anyone who has anything to discuss. I'd be pretty happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mario, and thanks to everyone who tuned in live today. If you're listening to the replay, then I'm happy to have you as well, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.